Diversity is a major part of the changing business environment. Let's take a look. Diversity refers to the variety of observable and non-observable similarities and differences among people. Some differences, such as gender, race, and age, are often the first diversity characteristics that come to mind. But diversity is much more than demographics and can reflect combinations of characteristics rather than a single attribute. Each individual also has a variety of these characteristics, and combinations of them can result in diversity. Have you ever met someone, thought he or she was different from you, and then learned that the two of you actually have a lot in common? This reflects two types of diversity: surface-level diversity and deep-level diversity. Surface-level diversity refers to the observable differences in people, including race, age, ethnicity, physical abilities, physical characteristics, and gender. Surface-level diversity reflects characteristics that are observable and known about people as soon as you can see them. Deep-level diversity, on the other hand, refers to individual differences that cannot be seen directly, including goals, values, personalities, decision-making styles, knowledge, skills, abilities, and attitudes. These invisible characteristics and others take more time to learn about, but can have stronger effects on group and organizational performance than surface-level characteristics. Even pay differences in groups and differences based on rank and power can affect how processes and performance ultimately play out. Three other types of within-group diversity that reflect different types of deep-level diversity include separation diversity, which refers to differences in a position or opinion among group members reflecting disagreement or opposition. Variety diversity exists when there are meaningful differences in a certain type or category, including group members' expertise, knowledge, or functional background. Finally, disparity diversity reflects differences in the concentration of valuable social assets or resources. Longer-term U.S. demographic projections further highlight the increasingly diverse character of the United States. The population is projected to become older. By 2030, about 1 in 5 people will be 65 years of age or older. By 2050, the total population is forecasted to grow from 282.1 million in 2000 to 419.9 million, a 49% increase. Non-Hispanic whites are expected to decrease from the current 69.4% of the total population to 50.1% by 2050. People of Hispanic origin, of any race, are projected to increase from 35.6 million in 2002 to 102.6 million in 2050, an increase of 188%. This would nearly double the Hispanic share of the nation's population, from 12.6% to 24.4%. The black population is projected to rise from 35.8 million in 2000 to 61.4 million in 2050, an increase of about 26 million or 71%. This would increase the black share of the population from 14.6 to 12.7%. The Asian population is forecasted to grow 213% from 10.7 to 33.4 million in 2050. This would double the Asian population share from 3.8 to 8%. Non-whites are expected to make up half of the working age group population in 2039 and more than 55% in 2050, up from 34% from today. On the other hand, although the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported as early as 1996 that almost half of all management positions in the United States were held by white men, diversity remains elusive in top jobs. In 2014, only 23% of Fortune 500 CEOs were minorities, and white people held 87% of total seats on corporate boards of directors. As the U.S. workforce continues to age, generational differences in the workplace are becoming increasingly common. These differences in turn pose new challenges and opportunities for organizations and their managers. Specifically, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a dramatic increase in workers aged 65 and older during the next decade, with the percentage of younger workers expected to decrease. This obviously increases the need for succession planning at many organizations to ensure continuity of leadership. Due to the aging U.S. workforce and the clearly differentiated characteristics of generations that comprise it, firms are also paying more attention to how workers of different ages work together. For instance, work teams are often age diverse, and it's increasingly likely that an older employee will report to a younger supervisor. A survey conducted by the Society for Human Resource Management found that in organizations with 500 or more employees, 58% of HR professionals reported conflict between younger and older workers, largely due to their different perceptions of work ethics and work-life balance. Most experts categorize today's workforce as comprising 4 generations. According to date of birth, they are seniors, 1922 to 1943, baby boomers, 1943 to 1963, Generation X, 1964 to 1980, and the millennial generation, 1980 to 2000. As each generation brings their unique experiences, values, and worldview, each also brings changes to workplace policies and procedures. Diversity fosters greater creativity and innovation. One reason that organizations should promote diversity is organizational performance. Recent research has found that organizations' performance increases when employees have more positive attitudes towards diversity. Diversity contributes to a firm's competitive advantage when it enables all employees to contribute their full talents and motivation to the company. The primary motivation for effectively managing diversity is the fact that doing so brings out the best in all employees. Diversity management is also important for legal reasons. Although many other anti-discrimination laws exist, one of the most important is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was amended in 1991. It prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. A report of the U.S. Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, known as the EEOC, identified several common diversity barriers that exist in many organizations. These barriers stem from a variety of decision-making and psychological factors, as well as employee unawareness. Understanding and proactively addressing the barriers can minimize their impact and enhance inclusion. First is the like me bias, where people prefer to associate with others they perceive to be like themselves. Next is stereotypes, a belief about an individual or group based on the idea that everyone in a particular group will behave the same way or have the same characteristics. Then there's prejudice, outright bigotry or intolerance for other groups. Another is a perceived threat of loss. If some employees perceive a direct threat to their own career opportunities, they may feel that they need to protect their own prospects by impeding diversity efforts. Next is ethnocentrism, the belief that one's own language, native country, and cultural values and norms are superior to all others. Unequal access to organizational networks refers to times when women and minority are excluded from organizational networks, which can be important to job performance, mentoring opportunities, and being seen as a candidate for promotion. In addition to awareness of the barriers to inclusion that we just discussed, there are other proactive things managers can do to promote diversity. The most important element in effectively leveraging the positive potential of diversity is top management support for diversity and diversity initiatives. If top managers do not promote inclusion and respect diversity, lower-level managers and employees will likely do the same. In addition, an inclusive environment is created when all employees' cultural awareness and empathy are enhanced. Creating fair company policies and practices that give all employees equal access to performance feedback, training and development, and advancement opportunities is also critical. Managing the difference that make a difference in organizations helps create inclusive workplaces. Cultural competence is the ability to interact effectively with people of different cultures. A culturally competent person has the respectful awareness and understanding of cultural differences. There are 4 components to cultural competence. Let's take a look at each. First is awareness of our own cultural worldviews and our reactions to people that are different. Next is our attitude towards cultural differences. This reflects a willingness to honestly understand our beliefs and values about cultural difference. Third are our cross-cultural skills. This component addresses the importance of practicing cultural competence, including nonverbal communication, to become effective cross-culturally. Although some people are more naturally culturally competent, most of us have to put an effort into developing this skill. This requires honestly examining our prejudices and biases, actively developing cross-cultural skills, learning from role models, and having a positive attitude about cultural issues. The key to cross-cultural success is awareness, being aware of how culture influences your interpretation of others, your own behavior, and how people from other cultures may see you. Understanding why we do things in certain ways, how we see the world, and why we react the way we do is an important part of being culturally aware. Cultural awareness can improve performance in culturally diverse organizations or when an organization's customers are diverse. Culture is the set of shared values, often taken for granted, that help people in a group, organization, or society understand which actions are considered acceptable and which are deemed unacceptable. Gerrit Hofstede, a Dutch researcher, studied workers and managers in 60 countries and found that specific attitudes and behaviors differed significantly because of the values and beliefs that characterize those countries. The two primary dimensions that Hofstede found were the individual collectivism continuum and power distance. Individualism exists to the extent that people in a culture define themselves primarily as individuals rather than as part of one or more groups or organizations. At work, people from more individualistic cultures tend to be more concerned about themselves as individuals than about their work group. Individual tasks are more important than relationships, and hiring and promotion are usually based on skills and rules. Collectivism, on the other hand, is characterized by tight social frameworks in which people tend to base their identities on the group or organization to which they belong. At work, this means that the employee-employer links are more like family relationships. Relationships are more important than individuals or tasks, and hiring and promotion are based on group membership. Power distance, which might also be called orientation to authority, is the extent to which people accept as normal an unequal distribution of power. Uncertainty avoidance, which might also be called preference for stability, is the extent to which people feel threatened by unknown situations and prefer to be in clear and unambiguous situations. Masculinity, which might more accurately be called assertiveness or materialism, is the extent to which the dominant values in a society emphasize aggressiveness and the acquisition of money and other possessions as opposed to the concern for people, relationships among people, and overall quality of life. Hofstede's framework has recently been expanded to include long-term versus short-term orientation. Long-term values include focusing on the future, working on projects that have a distant payoff, persistence, and thrift. Short-term values are more oriented towards the past and the present and include the respect for traditions and social obligations. Hofstede's research presents only one of several ways of categorizing differences across many different countries and cultures. His findings, however, are now widely accepted and have been used in many organizations. The important issue to remember at this point is that people from diverse cultures value things differently from each other, and that people need to take these differences into account as they work. One important area of managerial ethics is the treatment of employees by the organization. This area includes policies such as hiring and firing, wages and working conditions, and employee privacy and respect. For example, both ethical and legal guidelines suggest that hiring and firing decisions should be based solely on an individual's ability to perform the job. Wages and working conditions, although tightly regulated, are also areas for potential controversy. The same goes for employee benefits, especially if an organization takes actions that affect the compensation packages and welfare of an entire workforce or segment of it. Finally, most observers would agree that an organization is obligated to protect the privacy of its employees. Numerous ethical issues also stem from how employees treat the organization, especially in regards to conflicts of interest, security and confidentiality, and honesty. A conflict of interest occurs when a decision potentially benefits the individual to the possible detriment of the organization. To guard against such practices, most organizations have policies that forbid their buyers to accept gifts from suppliers. Divulging company secrets is also clearly unethical. Employees who work for businesses in highly competitive industries, electronics, software, and fashion apparel, for example, might be tempted to sell information about company plans to competitors. A third area of concern is honesty in general. Relatively common problems in this area include such activities as using business telephones to make personal calls, stealing supplies, or padding expense accounts. In recent years, new issues regarding such behaviors as personal internet use at work have also become pervasive. Another disturbing trend is that some workers are calling in sick simply to get extra time off. Although most employees are basically honest, organizations must nevertheless be vigilant to avoid problems resulting from such behaviors. These employees are often referred to as knowledge workers. Knowledge workers are those employees who add value in any organization simply because of what they know. How well these employees are managed is seen as a major factor in determining which firms will be successful in the future. As the importance of information-driven jobs grow, the need for knowledge workers will grow as well. However, these employees require extensive and highly specialized training, and not everyone is willing to make the human capital investments necessary to move into these jobs. In fact, even after knowledge workers are on the job, retraining and training updates are critical so that their skills do not become obsolete. It's been suggested, for example, that the half-life for a technical education in engineering is about 3 years. Further, the failure to update the required skills will not only result in the organizations losing competitive advantage, but will also increase the likelihood that knowledge workers will go to another firm that's more committed to updating those skills. In addition, in most firms employing these workers, there's been a tendency to reduce the number of levels of the organization to allow the knowledge workers to react more quickly to the external environment by reducing the need for bureaucratic approvals. A tiered workforce exists when one group of an organization's workforce has a contractual arrangement with the organization objectively different than that of another group performing the same jobs. These and similar arrangements, of course, may pose new challenges in the future. For instance, recently hired workers may come to feel resentment towards their more senior colleagues who are getting paid more for the same work. Likewise, as the job market improves and workers have more options, firms may face higher turnover among new, lower-paid employees. Specifically, a psychological contract is a person's overall set of expectations regarding what he or she will contribute to the organization and what the organization will provide in return. This figure illustrates the essential nature of a psychological contract. The individual makes a variety of contributions to the organization, such things as effort, skill, ability, time, and loyalty, and the organization makes returns in terms of pay, security, benefits, opportunity, and status. All organizations face the basic challenge of managing psychological contracts. They want value from their employees, and they need to give employees the right returns. A psychological contract is an unwritten agreement about expectations between an organization and its employees.